Can releasing Lake Sturgeon into Saginaw Bay help the species recover? What good fishing is coming up this fall? And is there a fish that can see with its skin? Really? To find out, let's ask Dr. Fish. That's right, it is Ask Dr. Fish, our every other month show in which we ask our doctors fish questions, science questions, and life questions. If you have a question for a doctor's fish, just do the hashtag Ask Dr. Fish, or you can comment in the chat right now, right? Just if you're watching, put it in the chat. We'll answer your question. But first, let's introduce our doctor's fish today. We're joined by Katie O'Reilly, Dr. Katie O'Reilly. She's the aquatic invasive species specialist with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. And you can find her on Twitter. She's Twitter famous. Dr. Catfish. Catfish with a K. Katie, it's a little joke there. A little pun. We're also joined by Titus Seiheimer, also a Dr. Fish, a fishery specialist at Wisconsin Sea Grant. Titus, what's on the fish shirt today? Is it a fish shirt?
It is a fish shirt. I am celebrating my favorite movie, and that movie, of course, is Jaws. So we've got a large great white shark.
Fantastic. 65 to 75% of fisheries biologists are there because of Jaws and Shark Week, I think, conservatively. And the other 25 or 35% got eaten by a shark. And we're also joined by Carolyn Foley, not a Dr. Fish, but she's research coordinator with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. And we're so happy to have her on. Carolyn, how's it going?
I am doing well, thanks.
Are you a Jaws? Or are you a?
I'm more of a SeaWorld, so blackfish messed with my head kind of thing. So yeah.
Oh
yep.
Yeah, you can't go watching the blackfish. No,
yep.
That's like reading about J.K. Rowling. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
All right. The point is this: we have some fish questions, and we're going to start off with topic number 1. Carolyn, take it away.
All right. So this is kind of a cuckoo crazy one in my opinion. But there was a story that came out this week about fish that can see with their skin. So it was a Science Alert article. So it was kind of like a journal article that was coming out and things like that. So maybe Katie, can you tell us a little bit about this fish that can see with its skin?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a fish known as the hogfish. So this is not one that we've got here in the Great Lakes, but it's a marine fish. And what's really cool about this is it's actually not a phenomenon that's like brand new to us. This idea that some species of fish, mollusks, so things like octopi, they can change colors. Like we knew that, but what this study was really cool and did kind of a deeper dive into is like why and sort of more of the processes of that changing color. And so when we say that, that the hogfish sees with its skin, it's not the same necessarily as its eyes. Our eyes absorb like kind of the light around us, and then they actually process it to give us an image that, kind of goes together in our brain, not a neuroscience. So
just start saying cones and rods and you'll be fine. Just
cones, rods, light, etc. But what this study found was that the hogfish, in its cells that change color, things that are called chromatophores, it actually is used to detect like the color of the fish's skin. So the best way I can describe it without getting too technical is like it's almost like having a mirror for the fish. The fish can't really tell what its skin looks like. So the sensory apparatus that's in these cells kind of gives feedback to the fish's nervous system about like what color am I, and then it can make shifts as needed to better fit in with its surroundings. So if you don't have a mirror underwater, the next best thing is to have your cells tell you what you look like.
And to quote the story, it's like taking a snapshot from the inside of the fish. So it is, it is like if you could imagine what you look like on the outside without a mirror, but from the inside, that's what the fish is doing. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's trippy stuff. I'm thinking about like the Zoom, you have to decide whether or not to turn on or off the self view. And for mental health, you should turn off the self view. But I, of course, turn it on. I'm going to check myself out. But so hogfish don't really have a choice, I guess. Is this common? Do you know of other fish that change? I know about the octopus, and some sort of squid, I think maybe. Are there other fish that you've heard of that change color? Color
is a weird thing in fish too. I mean, like it is very variable to begin with. And, you can see a lot of sort of different variation in just the color, even of the same species in the same place. You might see a lot of differences in color. And it looks like, maybe the Nile tilapia is that, I think that has also the ability to kind of detect what colors it is.
And what's also kind of interesting is this is a process called as like dynamic color changing, which means it happens sort of on the order of seconds to minutes, so very quick paced. But there's also color changes that can happen over longer periods of time too. So this is more like what you think about if you see like an octopus moving along the ocean bottom and you see it like take on all those crazy colors to match with their surroundings. That's this dynamic process, which, as Titus said, is seen in other fish like the Nile tilapia. And probably, I mean, honestly, I think if we start looking for some things, we might be surprised by the fish that have the ability to do that. But color is just a very, very much a Pandora's box of getting into cool and nerdy physiology of fish.
Yeah, but even just like what colors are where, like in marine environments where it gets really deep at different depths, you'll see different colors of fish because the light like kicks out, right? Like when you get very deep, I think all the red light is filtered out maybe. And so that's why you'll see a lot of red fish deep because it's essentially the same as black.
Yep, exactly. And so that's a way that deep sea fish especially, are often red because it makes them essentially invisible because that red light has been filtered out.
Yeah, and if you think of, just the general color, like the bottom of a fish is usually white. So and then the top is a darker color. So if you're, a predator underneath looking up, you're not going to see that white because it's going to disappear into the silhouette of the sky above. Or if you're looking from above looking down, a darker color on top is going to help. So, and if you think about changing color too, it's not like, these animals that change color, like, if I set my hand down on this desk and looked at it and then, made it change color, like they are just kind of automatically changing color to match their background. I don't think it's a conscious thought necessarily. So they're, just, that's why it makes sense to have this kind of vision to, through your skin, because if your skin can kind of see what the background is, it can match that a lot better. Otherwise, I would just disappear into my messy office background.
And we'll put a link to this story and also a cool octopus video. We'll find a cool octopus video if you're listening to this on podcast form. Or you can go to AskDrFish.com/6, the number 6, or just look down in your little pod reader and tap on this.
Let's go to the next story. It's about everybody's favorite, or some people's favorite, smallmouth bass. So in the Great Lakes, like the Midwest, smallmouth bass fishing is something that people really like to do. But we found a story about the Colorado River where smallmouth bass are less desired, shall we say. So
that's not a smallmouth bass. Look at that ugly thing. What is that?
Hey.
It's a humpback chub. So I don't know, Titus, do you want to talk about this story a little bit for us?
I think it's a magnificent looking
it's adorable fish.
There. Yeah. So this, it's a story, and there's our smallmouth bass, some little ones, juvenile smallmouth bass. So this is it's a story of species out of place causing problems with the native species. So smallmouth bass is, a popular sport fish around kind of the middle of the country. But once you get out of the range, it's kind of, along the Atlantic coast, really west of Nebraska. It's non-native as well. So it can cause problems. You've got your federally recognized kind of threatened species, the humpback chub. Humpback chub, which is that in the sucker family? Katie, you're our taxonomy expert.
It is a proud member of the sucker family.
Fully catastomid, that humpback chub.
Yes. So we throw in the weird names of common names where chub, which, for us, chubs generally are minnows in the minnow family, but why not name something also in the sucker family for fun? So So they're causing, smallmouth bass are causing problems. They're eating these threatened species. The just incredibly shaped horny-headed chubs, and so the Park Service will be removing them, removing these smallmouth bass using rotenone, which is a fish poison.
Rotenone. So I have done rotenone sampling before. This was back in graduate school when I was a master's student at the University of Georgia. And so we rotenone sampled a cove. And I don't fully get how it works, but what we do is we're in a big lake, or this was a reservoir, and we cordoned off this cove, released the rotenone, and sat there for a little while. And then the fish started floating up. And that was day number 1. Day number 2, a few more fish floated up. Day number 3, the professors were no longer there. They sent out the technicians and the undergraduates because it started to get a little foul. But so rotenone's a poison they use to sampling. I have a couple of questions about it. One, how does it work exactly, and why does it only kill fish, or does it only kill fish? And then I guess 2, why is this okay to do?
Yeah, so I can jump in there. So rotenone is, I would say, probably one of the more, if not most commonly used compounds for controlling, what we call undesirable fish. And whatever you consider undesirable fish, whether that's a non-native species or just species that you're not ideally wanting in your water body, rotenone is actually a naturally occurring substance. It's derived from the roots of tropical plants. It goes with the thing that, yes, it is a chemical, but all chemicals come from somewhere. And, this is a naturally occurring substance that we've, utilized for this purpose of controlling fish. It really started to get into use in North America by fisheries managers, I'd say early mid 20th century, like the 1930s. And what it does is it actually inhibits the transfer of oxygen in fish and cellular respiration. So it's not removing oxygen from the water column. It's actually going into the cells of the fish and making it so they're not getting oxygen. And so rotenone is kind of, I think of it as almost the nuclear option sometimes, because it is going to affect all fish. Some species are more susceptible to others, than others. So things like carp are a little bit more susceptible than some other species such as bass. But essentially, at a high enough concentration, you're going to wipe out the fish community. And then the idea sometimes is that by starting fresh, you can stock whatever fish community you're ideally trying to manage for. So it can be somewhat of a drastic option. Like, you said, Stuart, it results in kind of a crime scene for the fish PD department. But it is, again, if you're dealing with an undesirable fish population, it is a way that you can kind of start fresh.
Yeah, so kind of a blunt tool, but it is effective. Removing everything, and you see it a lot. Out west a lot with these different strains of trout, where you've got a stock trout that's just kind of a generic rainbow trout, but then if you want to restore a native strain, you need to kind of get rid of those generally bossier kind of bullies that are rainbow trout in general. Or in areas like with the invasive carps around Illinois, removing those carp, especially from things like locks and dams, might be a tool you could use. So it's a tool that we use in fisheries. Stuart, you're not a Dr. Fish, but you've got more experience with rotenone than I do. I've never used it.
So back to the smallmouth bass then. So in the Great Lakes, we had a sport fish that was really common in causing issues with the salmon. Why don't they just make a smallmouth bass fishery out there? What are the trade-offs there?
Oh, you want to take that one, Titus?
Yeah, I can address. I mean, this is the problem with a lot of these species that we have here. Same story with lake trout in Yellowstone Lake, with perch, yellow perch and walleye in the Pacific Northwest. it's just the same thing. They're out of their range. They are, you could create a sport fishery for them, but the price of that would be kind of losing native fish species. So generally I think it would be bad ecologically to support that. But yeah, it's a management decision, and how a lot of these species will get out of the range or invade these new areas is generally because of people moving them around. And sometimes it's a management agency that wants to, we'll create a new fishery, stock a new fish, or it can just be anglers who, hey, I like catching this fish back home, I'm going to take it to this place that I also like to fish and catch it there. And it could just be big problems that cost a lot of money to manage.
Right. And like Titus said, by creating these non-native fisheries, we're not just like harming other fish in these ecosystems. It can harm things like amphibians. It can, kind of alter the food web in sort of these unexpected cascading domino type ways. And so, in the case of the smallmouth bass and humpback chub, like, okay, who cares about the humpback chub other than me, because I think it is an adorable fish. But, that is, it really is about kind of the management focus and figuring out what we value. And I use the royal we there, but lots of different stakeholder groups are going to value different aspects of an ecosystem. And so, a fishery that has non-native species may be really good for tourism, supporting businesses, but it may have negative effects on other species that may have like cultural value to different groups. So fisheries management is very much a game of trade-offs.
Of course, and sometimes the royal we is just the royal me. Like we don't have to get this far afield, but when you look at the salmon in Lake Michigan, it was this one dude. It was Howard Tanner. And obviously more than just the one guy, but essentially it was one fisheries biologist in one state who said, let's do it. Let's just go. Do it and be heroes. We'll do it and be heroes. And in some ways, I guess he is. In other ways, it's complicated.
The smallmouth bass, part of why I brought up this story was from my life as a bug person who had to help sample fish. Smallmouth bass, it's these, I'm like, I can identify that one because of I always remember that. I don't know this chub, humpback chub, but the smallmouth bass, I was like, seeing it there, I was like, oh, I remember you. But anyway, okay. So just for those of you who have joined us online, just a reminder, this is Ask Dr. Fish, a show where our two Dr. Fishes answer your fish questions, science questions, and life questions. If you have a question for our doctors, you can put it into the chat right now, and we'll try to answer it live on the air. Or you can use the Twitter hashtag, artist formerly known as Twitter hashtag, AskDrFish. You can also email us at askdrfish@gmail.com.
Yeah, we want your questions questions or comments about fish you've seen in unusual places. That's something we want. Tell us about that or ask us about that. So smallmouth bass in the Colorado, a humpback chub in the Yukon, other fish in unusual places.
And I think another, like, as of watching that video, another thing that pops out, like, where are they treating it? It's below this massive dam. These are systems that are already very altered. So, you're a humpback chub, and, that's what we call Stuart most of the time when he's not here. And, they're already having to deal with these huge alterations to their natural habitat. And, so then you bring a new species in where, those smallmouth bass and actually also green sunfish, another, they're hoping to kill both of those because those are both a problem in this area for the humpback chub. So, it's doing what we have to do to preserve these species.
So that gives us a great segue into the next topic. So everybody who's listening online, feel free to add comments or questions, and we'll try to address those live on the air. But we did want to talk a little bit about a story that is near and dear to my heart. So in terms of trying to help native species out and reverting, there have recently been some lake sturgeon releases in the Saginaw Bay watershed. And Katie, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what's going on there and what's been happening for several years.
Oh, I would love to, because lake sturgeon are very near and dear to my heart as well. So to kind of set the stage before all of this, lake sturgeon were once incredibly abundant in the Great Lakes region, kind of pre-European settlement of the basin. And we still have, of all the remaining lake sturgeon in the world, we still have a big population of them, relatively speaking. But when we look at historical numbers of lake sturgeon, it's really a tiny fraction of what it used to be. And this is from a variety of reasons. Like we overfished them. They were considered a nuisance at one point. We've cut off access to their spawning habitat by building dams. So we hurt them in a variety of different ways. But in recent-ish decades, there's really been this push to help restore lake sturgeon populations to the Great Lakes. One of the challenges with this is it's not as easy as just raising a couple fish, releasing them. They, become adults and spawn in a couple years. Lake sturgeon take a long time relative to other fish species to become reproductively mature. So that is in order for them to have babies. So a lot of the efforts that we've made and investments that have been made in the last 10, 20 years are, we're still waiting to see some of the results of that with the goal of reestablishing some populations. So with that context, the story that we wanted to talk about focuses on the Saginaw Bay watershed of Michigan. So if you're looking at, I don't have the hand the wrong way, it's kind of in the thumb region of the Mitten State. And this particular watershed has undergone a lot of restoration, trying to restore connectivity of the various tributaries. But it's also been the site of several releases of baby sturgeon. I want to say I actually personally participated in one back in 2018, but I know there was one that happened in 2017 as well. So a lot of agencies working together have, really tried to involve the public in these releases of baby sturgeon into the rivers of the Saginaw Bay watershed to, get a sense of investment. Like you're sending this little baby sturgeon off and you're hoping in 15, 20 years.
Too.
Yeah, look at them.
Look at the cute little baby sturgeon.
So tiny. You're with the hope that, 20 years from now, they'll come back to the stream and have babies of their own and continue the cuteness for the future. So I think it's a really cool way to get people involved and invested in a species that really is one of the charismatic kind of megafauna we have in the Great Lakes.
So I participated in one of the events a couple of years ago too with my kids, and my daughter was just like, she was super interested, but she was like, it was unfair. They are so, and they look like little dinosaurs. It's so cool.
They look like that.
And then they've got, I mean, there's a lot of, if you ever, if you happen to see an opportunity, there may be another release this fall. It's so cool. They have so many that you get a chance to hold them and let them out. And yeah, it's really, really awesome.
Yeah. And I will take this opportunity to plug an opportunity in Wisconsin because, not just a Saginaw Bay thing going on, but also throughout the Great Lakes, people are raising and stocking these. So Harbor Fest in Milwaukee at the School of Freshwater Science, September 24th, 2023. You can come on down. These are going to be juvenile sturgeon that were raised by the River Edge Nature Center in a streamside rearing facility, all by volunteers. So they they have this little trailer that's like a mini hatchery. They take care of them every day. And then in September, they bring them all down and you get to kind of adopt a sturgeon basically and release it right into the harbor there. So, fun opportunities to see these. And I also took my kids 1 year to a different release event and they actually had this big slide that they had to install because it was hard you couldn't safely walk to the river's edge because of the riverbank. So they built this like slide with running water. And so you would put the sturgeon in on top and they'd just be like, kind of wiggling all the way down into the water. So it seems like a great way.
Oh, come on. There's got to be video of that. Where's the video?
I have video of that from the Maumee River.
It's like the salmon cannon, right?
Yeah, it's basically like salmon cannon, but just like water slide for baby sturgeon. It's adorable.
Yes, it's water slide, slip and slide.
And the way they yell out "wee" as they slide, it's just so cute. Like, wee! Yeah, dude. It's like that one Jaws. Remember the one Jaws where Jaws roars at the end? It's not the first Jaws. It's well into when Jawses were maybe less good. The little baby sturgeon. Whee! It's just.
Is that our next topic is actually reviewing, or maybe our next episode where we just shift to reviewing shark movies.
That'll be for our members only special. All right. We don't actually have a membership program. What do we know about log perch?
Okay, so First off, before we get into the story about log perch, we talk about common names and stuff like that. Where the heck did log perch come from? Do either of you know that?
I do not know. That's actually a really good question. But there's so many fish that we refer to as perch beyond just like the yellow perch, which is an official common name. I know in some places, sunfish, like things like bluegill, pumpkin seed, like those are collectively referred to as perch as well. So perch is just like a super common name for fish, but I don't know exactly where.
Wait. Bluegill and pumpkin seed are referred to as perch?
Well, yeah, kind of those panfish in general are referred to as perch.
Oh,
I think it's a southern thing.
Oh,
maybe?
It's southern. Yeah,
I think it's
But my dad's from South Central Florida, not the fun part, the hot part, and he calls them all brim. So I don't even know what that
the
is.
other one.
Brim.
Yep.
We got brim. Yeah, but I thought it was all fancy. I was like, oh, Dad, those aren't brim. Those are perch. Yeah.
all right. Okay, so
I was gonna say Titus went to his bookshelf, so I'm seeing that some on the ground research is happening here.
Yeah, I'm doing my go-to here is for going to Scott and Crossman, the freshwater fishes of Canada, generally, and they like to list the other common names. So I'm looking for log perch. I know one of the so we have just log perch in the Great Lakes, and that if you go through the dichotomous key and you look at the description for log perch, the term they use is for their snout, it's a conical protuberance. So I introduced my students this summer to that when we caught a bunch of log perch, which were not these Chesapeake log perch, but sort of a cousin to them. But conical protuberance is a great term, I think.
That's almost as good as caudal peduncle.
So that's another future show, is just all the strange, like we'll just show a
anatomical structures of fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that it's a battle of the books because Stuart has also consulted his bookshelf. So sorry, podcast listeners, it's just us leaping.
It's just us looking at books, trying to find the answer.
All right, who's got a bigger book? I got Freshwater Fishes of Virginia.
Crossman's going to be bigger, right? Like Scott and Crossman has to be
No,
bigger.
This is Bob Jenkins.
Yelling nerds. Okay.
Excellent. Well, while we're doing this, tell us about log perch.
Chesapeake log perch. And why are they in the news right now?
Yeah, so the Chesapeake log perch is actually kind of an interesting story because for most of our knowledge of its existence, it was considered synonymous with the common log perch, the one that Titus mentioned, we see all over the Great Lakes. But it wasn't until relatively recently, I think about 2008, when some genetic testing and studies came out that confirmed that the Chesapeake log perch was this unique species. So it's separate than the common log perch. But that is also kind of put it at a bit of a risk because where we thought it was more abundant, now we've realized that this unique species is limited to a really small area, kind of the Susquehanna River, Potomac River area of sort of Maryland, Virginia, the DC area. And its population numbers aren't doing hot right now. So that's kind of why it's in the news of, is this a species that's going to be listed as, like a federally endangered or threatened species. But I think it's actually kind of a unique story because it was only, relatively recently that we figured out it was a completely separate species. And there's a lot to be said for, when we're thinking about common fish species, like, are they actually made up of different sort of unique species within this sort of cryptic biodiversity that's not readily apparent, but becomes apparent when we look at sort of the genetic side of things. I think that's a really cool story.
All right, I'm sorry to report that I cannot find any actual reasons for this. However, let's just assume that it's obviously perch, and maybe they found them under logs, in association with logs. However, going to Fishes of Wisconsin by George Becker, I will read this passage. When fried, log perch are just as desirable a food fish as perch and sunfish. However, individual log perch of sufficient size for human consumption are caught but rarely, and larger fish are often highly encrusted with parasitic nematode black spot, which renders them unpalatable to most people. So another thing I love about some of these older fish books is when they throw in a preparation food way to eat them. So yeah, don't eat the Chesapeake log perch. I would not recommend that.
What percentage of the time is the way to eat them? You fry them, but
absolutely. Like eating what's our other go-to? When we can't get smelt, we can eat stone rollers.
So, okay, so question from the audience, and I'm going to send this one to Titus. Number one, I'm going to say my kids have already started playing Halloween music, so I'm hearing Ghostbusters every day. But there's a question as we were showing the video there, which I think we're going to show the video again now. There's a question, why is that dude wearing a Ghostbusters backpack? So, Titus.
All right, excellent question. So this is a backpack electrofishing unit. So one of the, we've talked about rotenone already. Well, another method that might sound kind of crazy, but is not as fatal to fish is electrofishing. So this is creating an electrical field, and basically he's got a net in one hand, I think anode in the other, cathode, on a pole with a ring. So you can see that yellow hand is the connected to the backpack. It's got that ring on it. You can see him lifting up that metal ring. So, and then off the back of the pack, there is another a wire hanging off. So it completes the circuit, this electrical circuit. The backpack creates an electrical field. It stuns the fish, and then you can net them and pick them up. So, and then once the current is turned off, they are not stunned anymore, and they can swim away. There's lots of different ways to use electrofishing. And so a backpack is a specific type. You're obviously wearing it on your back. This is for wadable small streams. As the streams get larger, you might need more power. So you can use a barge type or a raft type electrofishing unit. So think just a larger unit floating on a little barge. And if you get into more open waters, you'll have a whole electrofishing boat where you've got actually a generator that you turn on to create the electrical field. You've got big arrays hanging off the front of the boat, and then people up front netting them. So it's just a good way to catch fish. You can see in the picture now they're also using a seine as well. So you could use a seine to catch the fish, but it's not going to be as efficient. They're going to escape from that. This is probably very rocky habitat, I would guess, as well. So electrofishing. So another question, does this use high voltage, low amperage, like a stun gun? That we're going to kick over to Katie.
Yeah, so there is one way to think of it as kind of a stun gun. Generally, you also can adjust the voltage and amperage to make sure that essentially you don't want to stun them too high because you want them to recover. We want this to be as minimally traumatic for fish as possible to ideally, release them out, after you're done sampling. And it also the voltage and amperage depends a lot on the chemistry of the water you're working with. So in some systems, you may have to adjust it higher, if depending on the conductivity of the water. So things like salts and minerals that are in it. So it definitely does require a little bit of fine tuning for environmental factors. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely training. You want to be trained ahead of time too.
It doesn't work at all in salt water, right?
I mean, I don't know of cases where it's been used in salt water.
Yeah, I think there's a conductivity.
I think it's a conductivity thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be too high. It would just go.
So why aren't the people getting electrocuted?
So if you look at those images, most of them have waders on, and the waders generally have things like rubber boots. In some cases, they might have like rubber gloves on to kind of help. I think I might speak for a lot of fisheries scientists, and that sometimes we do have, instances where you reach into the water and you're like, oh crap, and you get a little bit of a like stinging feeling. I mean, so generally the voltage isn't that high that it will electrocute you as a scientist. I think we generally try and avoid that kind of level of voltage, but you can sometimes have a little bit of an unpleasant shock if you reach in without rubber gloves on.
I was going to say, well, the little fish is going by you and you get excited and you want to grab it. And if there's this is what happens to me anyway. I get excited and want to grab it.
Exactly. You're just like, oh, the water is electric.
And for me, so I used to drive, again, not a fish person, but I used to drive the boat. And there was this turtle one night who just kept going to the front of the boat. And I told my partner at the time, now husband, about it. And he was like, he's an extreme turtle. It's like, yep. So, and there was a comment that said, thank you, that was good information. So let's do our reset. Just a reminder, we did just have a really nice back and forth. This is Ask Dr. Fish, a show where our two Dr. Fishes answer your fish questions, science questions, and life questions. If you have a question for our doctors, you can put it into the chat right now. Use the X Twitter hashtag AskDrFish, or you can email us at askdrfish@gmail.com.
Things start to cool off in the fall, so it becomes a little harder to catch fish. But what should people be looking for if they want to go fishing? Like, what are the big fall fisheries coming up?
Well, I mean, if we can start Great Lakes fall fishing. And although the image we're looking at is from Idaho, really the same kind of fall run fish in the Great Lakes. These are all actually the same fish stocked into the Great Lakes. So things like steelhead, you might start seeing those. Although I think generally our steelhead are more spring run, so we might not see those. But definitely it is going to be Chinook salmon, coho salmon run season right now. So these, of course, in their native range are anadromous fish. So they spend most of their time out in the big water like the ocean, for us, the Great Lakes. And then when it comes to spawning time, they head inland into the tributaries, into fresh water. And that is where anglers in the Great Lakes, especially in the fall, can really access fish in a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of the summer fishing season, you really need a boat. You've got to go offshore. It can be expensive. But this is the time of year when you can, all you need is a fishing pole. You can walk to a pier at one of the rivers. You can walk upstream at some of the rivers where the fish are returning to, and you can pull out this, some pretty big salmon right now. Lake Michigan salmon, after some years of stocking number reductions, plus maybe a little rebound of alewife populations, are pretty big right now. So, people are catching a 30-pound Chinook salmon, which is pretty exciting. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, this is definitely, spawning time for the salmon. And so oftentimes, the salmon are very single track minded. They are coming into the streams because it is time to make the new generation of salmon. So, similar techniques to how people fish for spawning salmon on like the West Coast apply here in the Great Lakes. Our tributaries really serve kind of the same function. But sometimes you will catch a fish that is getting near the end of the spawning run. We sometimes refer to them as zombie fish because they've started to their bodies start to break down a little bit near the end of the spawning run. So sometimes they're not always the best for eating, but they do put up, a good fight for anglers who want to get out there and catch some, like Titus said, some really big salmon this fall.
Send us your zombie salmon. We're all professionals here. Send us your zombie salmon pictures. AskDrFish@gmail.com.
I was going to say that would be a good Halloween episode.
Exactly. The grosser, the better.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you want to, if you can get them early enough, like if you can, they generally start to stage off the tributaries before they start their spawning run, and you can still get out there and maybe eat them. But yeah, you don't want to eat a zombie salmon because they're pretty gross.
And I will say there was another question back to the electrofishing comment. There's how many settings can you control and how much voltage is generally used? And I want to say that like sometimes people adjust the voltage, not just based on the characteristics of the water body, but the fish that they're targeting. Is that right?
Yes. So depending on like if you are targeting specific species or like size classes, you may want to adjust the settings there as well. It also, the ability to which you have that you can adjust settings depends on the type of electrofishing you're doing. Like Titus said, there's everything from the backpack all the way up to the boat with the generator. So you may have the ability to adjust things differently depending on what your setup looks like.
Yeah, and that backpack shocker, I mean, all of them now are pretty much battery powered. They used to have, like, you had to carry basically a generator on your back and fire it up with pull cord, and then you got this loud generator running on your back. And now they're battery powered, so that you start at the least powered ones with the backpacks, and then you move your way up to more power. And that's generally the kind of thing the way I learned it in a electrofishing class is you can standardize the power, so you can adjust the amps and the watts to get a standardized power, so that you're getting consistent sampling, because you really want to sample the same way at different places, because conditions are going to be different in different places as well.
And then I think we're going to put a link in the show notes right now about salmon fishing in Lake Michigan as well.
Yeah, so there's a story about 2023 and how the salmon fishing has been really,
there you go. No, now you're starting to get there.
Yeah.
It'll do that.
It's been really awesome in Lake Michigan. And something that I find kind of interesting, I don't fully understand it, is like how people decide like what to stock and when and how many. It's a interesting math. All right. So for those who haven't joined us before, at the end of each show, we do a game. Do we want zombie salmon? We do not want zombie salmon.
Yes.
Stuart
Tammy's asked us if she's got a zombie.
Oh
my goodness.
Oh, heck yes. Heck yes.
Oh, that is wicked.
Perfect.
So if you're tuned in live, we're seeing, I'll try to describe it. So it's like on a beach with a little bit of water, and there's the salmon. There is no eye. In the eye hole, there appears to be blood. It might be human blood. It's not clear. And it's got these vicious looking teeth. This flesh is rotting, and it is genuinely terrifying. You won't want to eat a zombie salmon if you see one. Oh, they're all there. Oh, this is bad. This is some...
All right, so next episode, I think, is supposed to be in October.
Look at that one with the worms. Oh, click on the one with the worms. Right there in the middle bottom. Yeah.
Look at the one with the worms.
Oh, my.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Perfect.
Oh,
actually, we could talk about, I know there's been some studies in Michigan about what's called the necrobiome, which essentially is like all of the organisms that colonize a dead salmon and like how that creates its own little ecosystem. But that we are going to save for Halloween.
Yeah, definitely.
Necrobiome. Yeah, but there you go. So listeners or viewers, you got to send us something grosser than that salmon with the worms on it, or scarier than the one with the human blood in its eye hole. That's what.
Yeah, what grossest, scariest zombie salmon?
Yep. AskDrFish@gmail.com. Post a link in the comments right now if you're listening live. Challenge is out, and I'm going to put this in the next Teach Me About the Great Lakes newsletter as well. All right, but Carolyn, being a professional and less of a goofball than I am, wants us to pivot into our game. We like to end every episode of Ask Dr. Fish with a game. We rotate the game sometimes, but today we're going back to the classic 20 questions. And so what it's going to work is this. Titus Seiheimer, Dr. Fish, SG, has thought up a fish. Or if not, he's about to think up a fish. And so with that, what he's going to do is he's going to send it to us. We're going to ask 20 questions. I'm going to track the number of questions with my fingers. I will lose count because I do. And we will rotate around and we each get a question and then we guess. And if we guess it right, whoever guesses it right wins. If nobody guesses it right, Titus wins. And what you get if you win is soapbox time. You get 30 seconds to rant about whatever you want, fish-related or otherwise. If you're listening live, and you paste it in the comments at YouTube or Facebook if you have a question or if you have a guess. I don't know what we're going to do if you have a guess and win, because we're not going to give randos on YouTube or Facebook soapbox time. But we'll figure something out. So, yeah, paste your questions in the chat, and we're going to go. Titus, do you have a fish?
I have a fish.
All right, he's got a fish. And the other thing is I want the team to remember that we have a whole procedure for when we're ready to guess. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Katie O'Reilly, you're a Dr. Fish. Why don't you start us off? Question number 1.
Does this fish live on the bottom, the benthos, or in the water column?
It's the one question I have. And
sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yes, it is. It is a benthic species.
Is it a freshwater fish?
Yes.
Does this fish generally eat other fish? Is it piscivorous?
Not generally.
Okay.
Not generally. So it's probably smaller. Oh, wait, we don't know for a fact. Does this fish live in the Great Lakes?
Yes, it can be found in the Great Lakes.
Can be found. Oh, look at this. He's giving us more information. Titus is trying to be kind. It can be found, which means it's also elsewhere. All right, so we're 5 questions in. I'm no closer to guessing this fish, but maybe you are, listeners. If you have a question for our 20 questions, pop that in the comments.
Is it generally larger than a Pop-Tart?
Yes, it is larger than a Pop-Tart.
Does this species generally migrate?
Maybe. It's not a species that is, you would say, oh, this is a migratory species.
Okay, not like obvious migrating to
Right.
spawn. Okay.
It's hard when I don't really know the answers to any of the
Okay.
questions. but-
Yeah. I realize we need like a sound bit on this. This is where we're going wrong. You know, like, because all the Millionaire Show, they have like that dramatic music. I'm looking through. I don't think I have anything. Yeah, like it's all right. Something to work on for next time.
We got a question in the chat that might help.
All right, question number 8.
Does it taste like chicken?
Thank you for that, Chris Hogan.
Yes.
Yes.
No. How about no? Let's say
Well,
no.
Have you eaten it before?
I have not, but people do eat it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that. So people do eat it, but not enough that we know it tastes like chicken. All right. Is this fish? I'm going to go family. Is this fish a catastomid? Which means a sucker.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It is. You've
I
narrowed
know
it
you
down.
well. All right.
That was going to be my question too. So I deferred to Katie.
No, it wasn't. That's not true.
It
You're
really
trying to
was. I
live
was like, it's a sucker.
reflective
There was
glory.
a question about. So Katie, go ahead.
Is this species found in all 5 of the Great Lakes or only in part of the basin?
Not all 5. It is, and the Great Lakes aren't really its primary habitat.
Okay.
Okay. So some kind of a red horse. Is this some kind of a red horse? That's my question number 10.
No,
It's not a red horse.
not a red horse.
Not a red horse. We're halfway home.
Yeah,
Or-
you're in the home stretch now.
We're in the home stretch. We are halfway home.
Okay, so let's just recap. So it doesn't have barbels. It's a catastomid, lives on the benthos. Great Lakes aren't its, well, doesn't live maybe in the Great Lakes proper, but Great Lakes region is part of its range. People do eat it.
And it's bigger than a Pop-Tart.
It's bigger than a Pop-Tart.
And it's not a red horse.
Not a red horse.
All right. Guess 11 is yours, Carolyn.
Carolyn is not a fish person.
Has Carolyn heard of it? That's question 11.
There you go. Is it likely that Carolyn's heard of it?
I think it's possible.
Everything is possible.
I feel like it has been in the news. Maybe not this specific species, but one of its in the science news, we'll say, for a very interesting, surprising finding about this group of species.
Now I'm interested.
Does it have a long nose?
It does not have a long nose.
Let's see. So now I'm Googling sucker fish science news. Does it use physics to surf on its whale host?
How did you got it right? That's exactly.
Oh, that's a remora.
That's exactly it.
Exactly what I was going.
There's a lot of articles on how remoras. I guess that must have been a new thing. All right. Fantastic. Here's an article at GreatLakesNow. You know what? We just need to roll. Katie, do you have any guesses? This is getting.
Yeah, let me just try
audience.
one
Let
guess.
me apologize to our audience. They're listening to us like Titus has got us totally stumped. There's 100 million types
stumper.
of sucker out there. It's not a red horse, which is the only type of sucker I know anything about. And so we're relying on the grace and knowledge of Katie O'Reilly, but she isn't primed on this one. So
No.
I apologize.
But I'm going to take a guess anyway.
Yeah, take a guess. You're going to take a guess. Hold on.
Yep.
There's a guess procedure, Katie. I wasn't prepared for this. Okay. Now, we're going to take the guess, and then we're going to do the drum roll, and Titus is going to say yes or no. And then we're going to have either the womp womp or the woo. Okay. So here we go. Let's hear the guess.
Okay. Is it the northern hogsucker?
Wah, wah, wah. No, you're wrong.
No.
It is not. Oh, it is the black buffalo.
Ah.
All right. Well, Titus wins again. As
I
is
didn't wanna
shocking.
win.
So before Titus goes
We should
on
act
his
more happy. Good job, Titus. Way to go. Nice job.
wait.
That was a stumper.
Oh my goodness, Katie! We have that recording. You two, you both make the same noises every time. That is adorable. That is just fantastic. We've got Titus's womp and Katie's woo. Before we go to Titus's 30 seconds of soapbox time, there's a little bit of show-oriented news this week that I just want to point out for a second. We have two people leaving our production team on for greener pastures, hopefully not greener lakes. And that is, first of all, our live broadcast guru, Tammy Winsel. She's the parent of everything that we do right, I think. She has taken another job, a huge promotion, I assume. And so she has run every one of these live broadcasts. She done all the switching so that, like, when you see just Katie's face pop up or just my face pop up, God forbid, that's all been her. And if she doesn't do that, I have to do it, which means I'm even worse at hosting the show than I would be otherwise. So thank you so much to Tammy. And we're welcoming Dean Underwood as our new producer. Live broadcast guru is what we call it, because producer sounds like it should be paid. And then if you listen to the podcast version, that's always edited by Quinn Rose. And we've been warning everybody for months that Quinn is leaving to go to graduate school in library and information science. And Quinn is leaving us. This is going to be actually the last episode in the Goby Dog Media empire that Quinn edits. And so we thank Quinn for everything that they've done for us. It's hard with an editor. Like, it's weird. I don't need to go into this much, but I've been talking with the team. It's a weirdly intimate relationship in a strange way, because I've never actually spoken with Quinn, literally never exchanged a verbal word, but I've spoken at Quinn, just hours and hours and hours. And so it's this weird, and it's asymmetric. Anyway, and so it's kind of this unique, weird, intimate relationship. And so I'm strangely emotional about it, but it'll all be fine. And we appreciate everything that both Tammy and Quinn have done. But that is not the reason that we are here today. The reason we're here today is for Titus to go on a 30-second rant. So take it away, Titus.
All right. So why did I pick Buffalo? Of course, I picked Buffalo because I was just at the American Fisheries Society meeting in Grand Rapids, participating in the non-game symposium, and learned a lot about non-game fish like buffalo. Buffalo are these suckers. They can live a long time. Recently, Alec Lackman and others, Alex up at University of Minnesota Duluth, and he is the guru of aging these non-game fish, and found a big mouth buffalo related to the black buffalo that was 112 years old. And black buffalo can live 50 plus years. So really kind of unappreciated fish that live a long time, have seen a lot, and apparently you can also eat them. So it's all great things in my book.
Ask Dr. Fish is brought to you by the fine people at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, Wisconsin Sea Grant, and Goby Dog Media. The show is produced and hosted by Stuart Carlton, Carolyn Foley, Dr. Fish Katie O'Reilly, and Dr. Fish Titus Seiheimer.
The live broadcast gurus are Tammy Winsell and Dean Underwood, and the live broadcast itself is produced by our pals at Great Lakes Now. Science about the lakes you love. Go check out Great Lakes Now. News about the lakes you love. Science, news, everything about the lakes you love. Great Lakes Now has got them. Podcast version of the show is edited for one last time by the awesome Quinn Rose. Thank you, Quinn. Good luck, library sciencing. I know you'll be awesome at that. And the podcast artwork is by Ethan Kocak, and you can view his portfolio at ethankocak.com. That's Kocak.
If you have questions for Doctor's Fish, which really makes my job easier if you give us the questions, please send an email to askdrfish@gmail.com. Use the Twitter hashtag AskDrFish, or call our hotline at 765-496-4474. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you live on YouTube and Facebook at 11 a.m. Eastern on usually the second Monday of every even month. So October, I think, is the next one we're aiming for.
October, Halloween special.
In between now and with zombies. That's actually, I'm pretty excited. Okay.
AskDrFish@gmail.com. Give us your zombie salmon. Or mail a zombie salmon. Titus, University of Wisconsin.
No. Don't send that. Don't do that to the Postal Service. In between now and then, if you have fish questions, science questions, or life questions, just ask Dr. Fish.